Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel and welcome to something a little bit different. And if you stick around for the entire thing, I believe one of the more helpful pieces of content that you will watch or listen to this week. But also, like I said, something slightly different. So for those of you that don't know, I have a podcast called FPL Therapy, which I record on a Monday and upload on a Tuesday. And essentially what I do in that podcast mainly is review the games from the previous game week with an eye looking forward. So what stood out in terms of eye test, the data, the teams and players that I would look to target moving forward. It's a bit more of long form content, but as a result, you get a lot more details and a lot more of my sort of unfiltered thinking around the upcoming game weeks as well. Unfortunately, I record in London and I cannot get down to London today to record FPL Therapy. So rather than just cancel it, I thought, do you know what I can trial? Because I've wanted to do it for a while, recording it in the comfort of my own home and uploading it on the FPL Raptor channel as well and seeing if people still enjoy it. Especially if you've watched FPL Therapy in the past, let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you would continue to watch this if it was on the Raptor channel. And so, without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's start with the first game of the game week, which was Liverpool 2, Everton 1. And I think this game did go roughly as I expected. I thought Liverpool would win, but I didn't necessarily think that they would absolutely dominate Everton. And I think that's pretty much what we saw here. Liverpool probably did deserve to win. The XG was 0.9 to Liverpool, 0.7 to Everton. So this probably was like a 1-1 game in terms of XG. And Liverpool did throughout the game struggle to break Everton down a little bit. And as crazy as this sounds, given that Liverpool are top of the league and they are the ones getting the results, I do think that Liverpool aren't quite clicking right now, especially in the attack. The patterns of play just aren't quite there. Florian Wirtz hasn't really settled into the Premier League fully at the moment, and of course he was on the bench for this game. Mohamed Salah isn't performing at the level that we know he can. I've been very impressed by Ekitike, but I think someone like an Alexander Isak might bring a little bit more in terms of linking up the play. Gakpo has been fine. He's got the returns, but I think overall they're missing someone like a Luis Diaz on that left side. So I just don't think it's all quite fully clicked for Liverpool right now. Even if you look at the goals that Liverpool have scored this season, Gravenberch's goal in this game is a beautiful little pass from Mohamed Salah and then just an exceptional finish. Soboslai's free kick, the 100th minute goal or 101st minute goal, whatever it was, at the start of the season. Like, there have been moments that Liverpool have absolutely delivered in, and that's what Liverpool do well. And I suppose that's what champions do well, deliver in the moments where they need to and win games. But they're not scoring 5 or 6 goals a game and blowing teams away and creating like 4 or 5 XG. I'm going to read out a crazy stat right now. I was going to discuss it at the end with Haaland, but I'll discuss it now. Haaland has had 10 big chances this season. The entire Liverpool team put together have had 9 big chances. Haaland's had more big chances than Liverpool. And firstly, that shows how insane Haaland has been. But it also does just go to show Liverpool are a team who usually create lots of big chances, and they are struggling a bit right now. I will just note, they've also had trickier games than a lot of other teams. And I think even Everton, again, are a very decent defence. And on Everton, I've been so impressed at both ends of the pitch, because we know across the past few years there have been points when Everton have just set up, parked the bus and defended well. But I also think they are creating chances. And even in comparison to maybe Liverpool, they look free-flowing in the attack. Njaya and Grealish are linking up so well. They just need one of Beto or Barry to settle in and play a little bit better, because those wingers and even Dewsbury Hall in behind, I just look at Everton and I think they look really solid right now. They are a team that I would like to invest in. I guess the big talking point, of course, was Florian Wirtz on the bench. In hindsight, maybe this wasn't that difficult to predict, but I didn't see many people predict it before the start of Game Week 5. That midfield three, though, in Gravenberch, McAllister and Soboslai just works so well. It arguably does work better than Florian Wirtz in there at the moment. And of course, it's going to take Wirtz time to settle into the Premier League and settle into a midfield that they need time to see how each other play. Like, you know, when you've been playing with someone for a while, and you'll know this if you've played football, you just know where to expect them to be. You know the sort of passes you expect them to make, and that does take time. But Soboslai in that 10 with McAllister just behind and then Gravenberch sitting a bit deeper, it does work extremely well. We saw that last season. And Gravenberch in this game, another sensational game. Lots of people asking about Gravenberch. I still don't see him as an FPL option because I don't think on a regular basis, even though he did it in this game, he'll get DEFCON. And I just don't see him continuing at the rate of getting these attacking returns. But if he does, he'll, of course, be an absolute bargain. Soboslai in that 10 role. I mean, the man has played right back 8, 10. He's just such a quality footballer. He has that physicality, technical ability. Yeah, I just think that midfield for Liverpool is an absolute joke. The fact that they sat Florian Wirtz on the bench and still looked as good as they did, it's tough as sort of, if you're an Arsenal fan or a City fan, you're watching that thinking, again, they're not playing at their highest level, but they just continue to deliver and to get the points. Salah, of course, had another quiet game, but as I said, he's delivering in the moments. He's returned in 4 of the opening 5 weeks. So when Salah's playing at probably the worst we've seen him play in terms of FPL for a long time, even last season towards the back end when we said he wasn't forming quite as well, I would say this is even lower right now. You go through an entire game without seeing him much, but then he delivers a beautiful pass to Gravenberch, or he scores a penalty in the final moments. Because he's always on the pitch, and because he's a quality player, and because he has an elite mentality, Salah will continue to return. The concern is he returning at a high enough level to justify the price tag? Because, yes, 1 return a game is fine, and it means that he's not blanking at least, but you kind of do need more, especially if you're captaining him. Like, we captained him this week, 5 points. Yeah, that's nice. Or 5 points it was, wasn't it? Not great for his price. You need more, especially when you see what Erling Haaland is doing. So, do I think Salah is an absolute sell and that he's washed and cooked as an asset? No, not at all. I would not be surprised if now is the point, as we saw last season. Salah started last season well, better than this season, but not exceptionally. And then around game week 6 or 7, the man kicked on and then was just getting double-digit hauls for fun. I don't expect exactly that this season, but I wouldn't be surprised as Isak comes into the 11, as Florian Wirtz starts to settle in more, if Salah starts to go on a slightly better run and the returns start to improve, as does the underlying data. So yeah, I think for me, Florian Wirtz probably is a sell. He's too expensive. He keeps falling in price. He's just not offering enough. And even if he does start to return, again, at his price, you need quite a lot. And I just don't see that happening right now. If his minutes are also a risk, I'm just not there. With Salah, of course, everyone's going to want to get Haaland this week. So to facilitate and fund Haaland, yes, I would absolutely make the move. But again, if you've got Salah in your team and Haaland, or you can find another way to Haaland, I still think that Salah has a part to play in FPL this season. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of us regret selling him and look to move back to him around game week 8 when he plays Manchester United. I do want to talk about Everton because I said with Liverpool, there are no patterns of play. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. Again, they're the best team in the league at the moment. They probably will win the league. But with Everton, there are some very clear patterns of play that are happening. Grealish getting to the byline and crossing the ball to Ndiaye at the back post. That is happening on an extremely regular basis. Dewsbury Hall overlapping Grealish as well, so that when Grealish cuts inside, he can move it to Dewsbury Hall, who can also cross the ball in. What we're essentially left with, really nice link-up play between Grealish and Dewsbury Hall, who just naturally drifts out to that left side. And then Ndiaye at the back post. I think we will see so many goals with one of those two crossing it and then Ndiaye heading it. This week, it was a Grealish cross to the back post, but then Ndiaye cuts it back to Idrissa Gana Gueye, who obviously finishes it. But that pattern of play is working very well. Grealish just had the beating of Conor Bradley in this game. It's so good to watch Jack Grealish playing at such a high level. I think Ndiaye, for me, I'm going to make a controversial statement. I think he is the easiest pick on Wildcard after Haaland. Like, if I was to list the players that I'm definitely having on my Wildcard, Ndiaye is second after Haaland. I think Ndiaye, pound for pound, if we're looking at value, is a better pick than Semenyo. I think he's a better pick than any of the other midfielders. The reason for that is, I think Semenyo's great, by the way. I'll have him on my wildcard, absolutely. But with Ndiaye, you're getting regular DEFCON now. This is the second consecutive week he's hit DEFCON. And he's also averaging 10.98 per 90. He's almost averaging 12 DEFCON per 90, which is bonkers for such an attacking player. His minutes are exceptional. He's got really good goal threat. He's also pretty creative, and we think he's on penalties. And also the fixtures, outside maybe 1 or 2 where you could get away with rotating him, they're fantastic. But then I say rotate him. If he's on penalties and he gets DEFCON, he's the sort of player you can just play fixture-proof every single week. I think at his price, I can't believe it, by the way, he almost fell in price before game week 5, which I couldn't believe. So for me, absolute auto pick on the wildcard, and I think he's absolutely fantastic. And by the way, if you've never watched my videos, by the way, please consider subscribing, but I am on wildcard this week, so I might keep referencing back to wildcard. So yeah, Ndiaye for me, fantastic. Tarkowski is one of only 2 players with Senesi to pick up DEFCON in every single game. 5 consecutive games. So his points so far this season, 4, 8, 3, 8, 3. He is essentially starting at 3 points minimum every single week. That's assuming he concedes a couple of goals. If they don't concede, of course, that's 4. Sorry, if they don't concede 2+, then that's 4. And on the odd chance he gets an attacking return or a clean sheet, the man is hauling. So I do think Tarkowski is a great pick. He's in my current wildcard draft. My concern is Senesi is basically Tarkowski, but for slightly under, like 0.8 million less, I think it is now. Chris Richards is picking up a lot of DEFCON. We'll discuss Mukiele from Sunderland in a bit at 4 million, picking up a lot of DEFCON. You've got Anderson as well at Fulham doing the same. So whilst I think Tarkowski is going to probably be the best across the season for DEFCON, and he's playing in a decent defence, I do also think it's a lot of money to spend on an asset. You need slightly more clean sheets or slightly more attacking threat to probably justify the price ahead of someone like a Senesi or an Anderson. The only other thing to discuss in this game then is actually Dewsbury Hall is the only player on 4 yellow cards. Now, if you have him, this doesn't matter, you keep him. And if you really think he's the best 5 million asset, then I would probably just go out there and buy him anyway. But remember that after 5 yellow cards, they'll receive a 1-match suspension. So especially if you're looking at playing your bench boost at some point coming up, Dewsbury Hall could be a slight risk. In fact, I think there are only a couple of players on 3 and then most people are on 2 or 1. So Dewsbury Hall does like a yellow card. That suspension will be coming. Moving on to the next game, we have Brighton 2, Spurs 2. This is a really difficult game to try and analyse. The best way that I would call this is like a topsy-turvy game where the momentum was sort of going back and forth. The XG was 1.32 to Brighton, 1.22 to Spurs. This does also feel like a game where I think both teams will come away thinking, we could have won it, but you kind of also take a point against a pretty decent opponent. I do think, once again, this game showed that I think Spurs have been slightly fortunate to have 3 clean sheets so far this season. They're currently 8th for XGC, which isn't terrible, but you would expect clean sheets over the coming weeks to maybe decrease. I just don't expect them to keep clean sheets on a really regular basis, but they will get them. And Romero in particular is a DEFCON magnet. He got 18 in this game. He's a player that I don't know that he'll get it as much as a Tarkowski or a Senesi, but I do think he'll get it more than a Van de Ven or a lot of other defenders. So I think if you're targeting DEFCON here, you are targeting Romero, just the way that he plays. By the way, you can almost tell eye test-wise if a player is going to be good for DEFCON. Think about Tarkowski, think about Senesi, Romero, aggressive defenders that are always winning the duels. With centre-back partnerships, this is getting a bit nerdy now, but there's always one centre-back that's the more aggressive one, that goes and wins the headers, that marks the number 9, that attacks the corners. And in this team, it is Romero more than Van de Ven. And the reason is Van de Ven is absolutely rapid. So often it's Van de Ven that drops off a little bit, and it's Romero that does a lot more of the aggressive intercepting, blocking, and clearances. So yeah, I think Romero is fantastic value at his price, and he's also pretty decent in the air as well, Romero. I suppose the big talking point here is that Xavi Simons was on the bench. Again, along with Florian Wirtz, one that I probably wasn't expecting to see Xavi Simons on the bench. This maybe says 2 things. Maybe Xavi Simons' fitness isn't quite there, and that once his fitness is there, maybe we start to see him play every available minute. Or maybe Thomas Frank just doesn't see Xavi Simons quite as indispensable as someone maybe like a Mohamed Kudus. I'm not sure I'm buying into that massively. So I'm going to go off the basis that obviously they played in Europe. Maybe his fitness isn't quite there right now. Still settling into the team, by the way, with some respect. Like, I know he's a fantastic footballer, but as we said with Wirtz, it does take a bit of time to settle in. So yeah, I think moving forward, I would still expect Xavi Simons to start pretty much every game. But certainly if you are aiming to own an asset that is playing every available minute, it probably is Mohamed Kudus. He picks up 2 assists in this game. He also had an assist in the previous game disallowed because of the Van de Ven push on Walker-Peters, which led to the Romero goal being disallowed. Kudus is, at the moment for me, sort of top 3 players in the Premier League for creativity. My concern with creative players like Mohamed Kudus, I'll use an example in the past, a bit of a random one, Dwight McNeil. Assists just aren't enough in the Premier League. You just don't get enough points for them. Mohamed Kudus, in this game, played exceptionally well and got 2 assists, and he came away with 7 points. I know in some other games maybe assists will get you bonus too, but unless you do pick up 2 to 3 bonus, it's much better to just have a player that scores goals every few games rather than have a player like Kudus that is picking up and racking up loads of assists. So for me, is Kudus still a great FPL asset? Yes, big thumbs up. I like him. I'm probably going to sell him on my wildcard though, because it's not enough. He's just not showing much goal threat. There were a couple of shots he had in this game which could have found the back of the net, but they're still speculative shots. Like if you look, actually I'll have a quick look at his data here. Because I know it's not bad, but it's not terrible. So 0.13 XG per 90. In the game so far, it's been 0.06, 0, 0, like literally 0, 0.47 against West Ham, a bit better, and then 0.11 against Brighton. His creativity, much better. But I do just feel like overall, he's slightly been overperforming his data, and unless he changes the way that he's playing right now, he feels like a facilitator. He'll facilitate the rest of the players to score goals, and he's not going to be the one getting them as much. So yeah, a good pick, great minutes, good fixtures. And this is the thing, right? So I uploaded my wildcard draft video yesterday on Sunday, and the number one comment other than where are the Liverpool players is where are the Spurs players? But I look at Spurs right now. I just said that I have issue with Xavi Simons because he's expensive and he's just been benched, but I think he's okay, but I'd rather Njai at that price and Semenyo for a bit more. Kudus doesn't have the goal threat. Romero, I think, is a good option. Van de Ven just doesn't really carry the DEFCON potential in comparison to a Senesi or an Anderson or even a Chris Richards. I agree, by the way. Spurs' fixtures coming up are really good. So they have Wolves, Leeds, Villa, Everton, Chelsea, Man United. That's a nice set of fixtures in there. But who do you own? It's no good just saying, where are the Spurs? It's like, which of those Spurs assets do you want me to put in? And I'm not fully convinced by any of them. And again, they have been overperforming their expected data in both the attack and the defence. So yeah, for me, I think Frank's doing a good job, but I'm probably going to avoid. Just on Brighton, I'm still not fully there with picking any of their players, but if I was to pick a Brighton player, Yankuba Minte is just such a fantastic footballer. One of my favourite footballers in the Prem. Last season, actually, in Game Week 38 of FPL Therapy, I said to Praz, I think it was, or maybe it was the episode before that, but the one player that I'm keeping an eye out for next season was Minte. I just think he's exceptional, so talented. And the way that he took that goal against Spurs, taking it round Vicario, I just expect him to continue playing really well this season. If his minutes continue to look really good, I will absolutely own him at some point. There's just always this concern with Hertzler that something seems to be holding him back from treating Minte in a similar sort of vein to Matoma, where he plays him every available minute. You just don't really see that as much from him. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it on Brighton 2, Spurs 2. Probably about the deserved result. But yeah, I struggle with Spurs just because I want to own their assets, but I'm just not sure about which assets to own in particular. The next game, Burnley 1, Forest 1. This was probably a 1-1 game. I think this is about deserving. Both keepers made some good saves. Dubravka in particular. I think if one team did deserve to win it, it probably was Nottingham Forest. I think Nico Williams obviously scoring an absolute thunder bastard 2 minutes into the game was absolutely lovely, especially in a week where there were only 2 clean sheets, which both came in the same game on Sunday, which we'll discuss. Getting a 10-pointer from a defender is fantastic. I just don't want to invest in Nottingham Forest right now. I mean, after the Sunderland game, the fixtures are terrible. So what it probably comes down to, unless you're wildcarding, if you've got Forest players, even Chris Wood, who's been super disappointing, you keep them for one more game, despite, by the way, Sunderland have looked brilliant, so you could get rid. But if you're on a wildcard, I think wildcarding with any Nottingham Forest players just doesn't make sense. We need to see more from Ange and Forest, but we also need better fixtures. So yeah, I think one more week for Forest assets if you're not wildcarding. If you are, I would get rid of them altogether. And if you're on a free hit, I would certainly include at least 1 or 2. But again, you could argue that Sunderland players are the ones you should be looking at, given the performances we've seen from them recently. I think the only player that I want to discuss in a lot of detail here is Jadon Anthony, who has scored his 3rd goal of the season and is now, let me double check this because I wrote these notes a couple of days. Yeah, so Anthony is still the 2nd top scoring midfielder in FPL behind Semenyo. Now, you might look at this and say, it's classic, these things happen, players overperform. Anthony's not massively overperforming. Like, his XG and XA per 90 is 0.42 and 0.11. He's just looking 2.1 XG he's already had this season. So yes, slightly overperforming, but not to a huge extent. Eye test wise, brilliant. I've been raving about Anthony, by the way, since game week 2. And I keep saying, it doesn't feel great owning a Burnley attacker. He doesn't feel like a Burnley attacker when you watch him. And he probably should have scored another goal against Forest. He had a great chance, which Sell saved. I really don't mind him as a wildcard pick. The concern is you've got other really good options like Stack, we'll discuss, Caicedo, Reinders. So it does feel difficult putting a Burnley asset in, especially when the first game is against City. But just keep an eye on him. Like, his XGI so far this season has been super consistent. 0.8 in Game Week 1, 0.79 in Game Week 2. then 0.39, 0.11, which came against Liverpool, and then 0.5. I love it when a player has consistently good data, because what you might see is a player has just an absolute stormer of a game where they get like 1.8 XG in a game, and then the 4 after that are 0.01, but overall their average is pretty good. Every single game, Jaden Anthony's getting chances and creating chances. So, yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to him, because if you watched Burnley, and for some reason I seem to have watched a lot of Burnley this season, every time he gets on the ball, it's exciting. His fitness looks pretty good. He's going to be the player that keeps Burnley up if they end up staying up. And I think that's a difficult task right now. If you look at Burnley's defensive data, they are comfortably the worst defence in the league. So far this season, they've conceded over 10 XG. There are only 3 teams in total to have conceded more than 8. So Burnley are thus far absolutely categorically the team to target. People say, yeah, but they defend well and they block quite deep. The data doesn't suggest that they're defending overly well. Yes, they do play a deep block, but that doesn't mean that inherently you defend well. That's just a style and tactic. So, yeah, key points from this game. Need to see more from Forest, maybe keep for one more game. Burnley, I do think, are the team to target in terms of for your attackers, but I also really don't mind Jaden Anthony as a pick. The next game, West Ham 1, Palace 2. This was another game where Palace created tons of chances, but maybe didn't take as many as you would like them to. So in the previous game, they had 1.77 XG, and in this game, they had 2.31. So that is 2 consecutive games that Palace have accumulated around 2 XG. They're clearly not struggling as much as people thought they would in the absence of obviously Eze leaving and Ismaila Sarr being injured. People are like, you can't pick Mateta. They'll create no chances with that team. They're creating the chances. Unfortunately, in particular, Mateta just isn't finishing all of those chances. Also, Pino continues to get chances and doesn't finish them. So really, Palace are just a great team. I was looking into some of their data. We'll discuss their data in a second, actually. Palace have now only lost 4 of their last 36 games. They are unbeaten in 16 games. That is remarkable. Think about the teams that Palace have played in the last 16 games, by the way. They're going to have their biggest test of all against Liverpool. I would not be surprised if Palace get a result against Liverpool. This will categorically be Liverpool's toughest game of the season, unless Palace just fail to turn up in it. They're just exceptional. Defensively, brilliant. They're in the top 4 or 5 almost constantly for expected goals conceded. And like I say, this season, they're also creating chances. That would be the big criticism of Crystal Palace, is that they don't create chances going forward, but they are doing that. I think Sarr is still a great FPL option. He's expected to be back for game week 6 in some regard. You probably don't want him against Liverpool, but if you're on a wildcard where you can tuck him on the bench, or maybe just start him and hope you get something, I really think Sarr is probably one of the better assets, sub 7 million. I do still prefer Ndiaye and Semenyo, and that's why it's tricky for me, because in my current team and my current draft, I don't have a way to get a third asset in and around that price. I think my midfield right now is a cheap asset like Stack. I've got Bruno Fernandes, who maybe we'll discuss a bit later, the man on the thumbnail. Then I've got Reinders, and then I've got Semenyo and Ndiaye. So it's just difficult to squeeze in an extra player at that price. But if I had the money to do so, I'd be extremely tempted. And I think he will offer really nice value moving forward. I also think the defenders are still fantastic. The fixtures moving forward for Palace aren't ideal. Let me actually bring up the fixtures here. So they've got, obviously, Liverpool this week. Then it's Everton, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, United. They're not like, I think maybe when I first glanced at them, they look worse than they actually are. But they're still not, again, super targetable fixtures like they were for the Sunderland and West Ham games. So do I think I would be very happy including a Richards or a Mark Gay, who continues to have so much attacking threat at the moment? Yeah. I actually really like Lacroix and Munoz at their prices too. Lacroix is a bonus points and usually a DEFCON monster, although didn't get it in this game. And Munoz has so much attacking threat. But I look at Richards in particular, but also Gay, and just think, I think they offer better value. Richards achieved 17 defensive contributions in this game. So yeah, I think Richards and Gay, sub 5 million defenders, again on a wild card, I like. And I think the only thing to say on West Ham, they're in trouble. They are in real trouble. I saw a tweet this morning just before recording this that apparently Graham Potter is essentially sacked, but they don't see, and this is crazy, they don't see the Everton game and the Arsenal game as winnable. The next 2 they just view as they're going to lose it regardless. So they're just going to leave Potter in for these 2 and then sack him after in the international break. I actually don't think that sounds too out of the question. That sounds about right, which is a sorry state to be in, that they don't even think they can put up a fight in those two games, but also just goes to show the kind of environment at West Ham right now. If you own Everton players in game week 6, it looks great. And then Arsenal players for game week 7. I'm on a wildcard right now. I've got 2 Everton and 3 Arsenal, and I'm looking at West Ham in the next 2. That they are, you'd imagine Everton and Arsenal are going to absolutely batter West Ham in those 2, unless West Ham just finds something from somewhere. And football is unpredictable. You never know what you might get. But yeah, West Ham look like, along with Burnley and maybe Wolves, we'll discuss Wolves in a second, they look like the 3 teams to target for me right now, and not the likes of Leeds and Sunderland. They are putting up a pretty decent fight. So on that game, Wolves 1, Leeds 3. The XG in this game is mind-boggling to me. It's 1.78 to Wolves and 0.48 to Leeds. Now, I expected Leeds to have low XG, because if you look at their goals, they were one from a really tight angle on the left. We obviously had the stack free kick as well, and the Calvert-Lewin header. All 3 of those are quite low XG chances, so I get that. Wolves did not feel like they had 1.78 XG, so I truly believe in data. I like using it. This is one of those where eye test helps, because if you watch this game, Wolves didn't look likely to win this game at any point. The vibe after this game amongst Wolves fans wasn't, oh, we played really well, but we didn't finish our chances. It was a poor performance. Leeds looked relatively comfortable, I think, in this. So maybe it was just a good amount of total shots that led to that XG. But I have been just really impressed by Leeds. Leeds and Sunderland look like 2 teams that are going to stay up at the moment. And that is such a great feeling. As much as I'm a Man United fan, so I wouldn't be too bothered if Leeds went back down. I just like seeing promoted teams putting up a proper fight and playing good football as well. Leeds look really solid defensively. This has actually been one of the highest sort of total XGs they've conceded in a game. But the likes of Rodon and Goodmanson at 4 million, I think they offer really nice value. Obviously, the players they talk about here is Stack, who gets a 15-pointer, a goal, an assist, and Defcon. At 5 million, he is in my wildcard team at the moment. It feels a little bit knee-jerky, but I do think overall, like, his DEFCON per 90 so far has been 8.6. He's achieved it in 2 games. The 3 games in the middle against Arsenal, Fulham, and Newcastle was 4, 6, and 5. When you look at the data that he's had in previous leagues, and also we saw it in game week 1, and then now I'm a bit unsure what happened in those middle 3 games. So maybe Stack is going to be a player that just doesn't manage to pick up DEFCON in every game, but you can get it every few. Or maybe those 3 games were an anomaly. This is the issue with such a small sample size. But what do I like? I think Leeds have really nice fixtures coming up. He's perfect for a bench boost. You feel like you can play him every week. If he's taking direct free kicks, he's got a lot of quality, by the way. You'll get the odd assist and goal from open play, and he could get you DEFCON. At 5 million, along with Dewsbury Hall, it does feel like they are probably the best 2 cheap picks. We'll discuss King a bit later of Fulham. I don't really rate that pick anymore. So yeah, I think if you're looking sort of sub 5.5, away from the likes of Caicedo and Reinders, I think Stack and Dewsbury Hall probably are the 2 that stand out for me. I think that's it overall now. But yeah, I think Leeds are the team that I would want more from. It's a real shame, actually, because Wolves' fixtures coming up are arguably the best of the bunch. They've got Spurs this week, which isn't great, but then they've got Brighton, Sunderland, Burnley, Fulham after that. Sunderland and Burnley back-to-back in 8 and 9. You feel like those are the fixtures you want to target, but I'm not sure you can justify putting in any Wolves assets at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. Moving on to the next game, and a game that I am very happy to sit here and discuss, is Manchester United 2, Chelsea 1. This, of course, was a game that was largely dictated by the red card. Without the red card, who knows what might have happened. If you watched that game, though, as much as it was only 3 minutes, 4 minutes before Sanchez was sent off, the opening 3 or 4 minutes, United started so well. We are a team that struggled to string passes together. We were stringing passes together. The attacks looked fluent. Defensively, the energy, just the general vibe. You get a vibe in the opening few minutes of a game very often. Manchester United's vibe in this game was exceptional. And so I think this is a game where Man United could have done well anyway. But obviously Sanchez going and doing that just kills the game for Chelsea. On the red card, because apparently he was sent off for sort of the last man foul or a professional foul rather than it being violent conduct, he's actually only suspended for 1 game, and he serves that suspension in the EFL Cup. So Sanchez, by the way, is available for game week 6 in FPL. So if you haven't sold him, he should be available. Now, will he start? Given that Maresca looked absolutely disgusted by his performance in doing that, maybe not. Maybe Jorgensen will get the nod now. but he will at least be available for that game. For what it's worth, I think it was violent conduct. His studs hit above Mbeumo's knee. So for me, it should have been a 3-match suspension, but we'll leave that there. I will not be including Sanchez on wildcard because it does feel like Maresca already said before this game, Jorgensen will start games in the Premier League. It does feel like Sanchez will be rotated now, so I would avoid him. Anyway, after that, I think Maresca really ruined the game himself with the subs. The first sub, I think was that Esteval off and Jorgensen on. I should have reminded myself, but I think that was the first sub. Esteval off, Jorgensen on. That makes sense. Esteval was absolutely the player to take off. You've got Cole Palmer and João Pedro are proper game winners. You've got Pedro Neto as well. It makes sense. The next sub blew my mind. Taking off Pedro Neto in that game, can't understand it. The one player ahead of Palmer, João Pedro, anyone on that pitch that you want in a game like that is Pedro Neto. If you have 10 men, you're going to have to play counter-attacking football. Pedro Neto is probably one of the better players in the Premier League for counter-attacking football because of his pace, his energy, his ability to run with the ball under pressure. I could not understand that at all. Then, obviously, Palmer picks up the injury. And by the way, at this point, do you know what else was great? He made the subs like 1 minute apart. He's used 2 of his substitution windows. Why not just make the moves together? I think Maresca genuinely lost his head. Obviously, then Palmer picks up the injury. So then they've made 3 subs in 3 different substitution windows. They're left with a team that doesn't have Neto, doesn't have Esteval, doesn't have Palmer. You basically just got João Pedro sat up front by himself. It was just never going to go overly well for Chelsea. Obviously, the red card to Casemiro helps them get back into the game in the second half. But overall, they still didn't create many chances. It was 0.43 XG for Chelsea, 1.84 for Manchester United. I'm going to read out some crazy stats now on Manchester United. Man United have had the most shots in the league with 81. They've had the most shots in the box with 55. And they've accumulated the highest XG out of any team in the league with 10.01. By all accounts, Manchester United have been the best attack in the league in terms of the amount of chances they've created. Of course, the concern with United is Sesko hasn't fully settled and a lot of the other United players just don't finish their chances. But it is promising so far from what we've seen from United going forward. We know that I'm a Bruno Fernandes fanboy. Even if you remove my Bruno Fernandes bias, anyone that watched that game will accept it was a brilliant performance from him. That was a captain's performance. And what was lovely is because Chelsea went down to 10 men, before obviously Casemiro got sent off, Casemiro just sat there. Bruno Fernandes was playing in the number 10 role, basically. And this is why I've got issues with Amorim. I want to trust the manager, but when you see what Bruno Fernandes can do in a slightly more advanced role, just behind a proper striker in Sesko, he was sensational. And to be honest, even once Chelsea went down to 10 men, Man United went down to 10 men, Bruno still played a really advanced role because obviously Sesko came off. So Bruno at points was playing like the false 9. There was a point in like the 85th minute or something like that when Bruno broke through as the only Man United player and almost scored a goal. He was just brilliant. He did finish the game on 8 DEFCON because obviously he wasn't doing much defending. I still think Bruno Fernandes is just an exceptional FPL asset, I'll be honest. And I know a lot will disagree with that. But when you get penalties, minutes, set pieces, DEFCON, and just a great footballer, and the numbers that United are putting up, like it's difficult to ignore it. I think Bruno Fernandes is just a really nice option, especially over the next 2 against Brentford and Sunderland. As much as, again, Sunderland have defended well, which we'll discuss, it's still a fixture you don't mind having an attacker in. So yeah, I think Bruno for the next 2 weeks has a very good chance of being in my wildcard team. Just on Cole Palmer, even if Palmer is cleared as fit now, I don't think I'll have him on my wildcard. He's clearly struggling with an issue with his groin. I can't remember which journalist, it might have been Simon Phillips from Chelsea, said that apparently Palmer has had a couple of scans now, and every time he has a scan, it's showing nothing on his groin. Like there's no issue on the scan, but he keeps saying that he's having issues and pain and discomfort. So they're giving him painkillers and letting him play because the scan is showing no issue, but he keeps picking up issues and like he's feeling discomfort and pain, which is really weird because normally then it would come up on the scan. So I assume he'll have another scan. But if he's continually struggling with the same groin issue, that's a real concern for me. So yeah, even if he's fit, I'm not that sure. On João Pedro, I think João Pedro is probably the second best forward in FPL to own behind Haaland. I have my doubts. I think João Pedro is great, but he's not going to do it all himself. So unless Chelsea start to compose themselves after this game and get back to it and start creating chances, João Pedro won't be the sort of player where he can do everything for Chelsea. He needs other good players around him. We saw that for Brighton as well. He struggled in the absence of someone like a Danny Welbeck. I also think, again, he is better playing off the number 9. So I think once Delap's back, that will help João Pedro, because playing as the 9, I don't think he's quite doing enough for me. And also, with Champions League kicking in, I do still worry about João Pedro's minutes a bit. But I just don't see that they can rest him. Like, even in this game, João Pedro was doing so much running, bless him. They couldn't take him off. Like, they just couldn't, because he's their only real quality attacker on the pitch at that point. So I do think João Pedro's great, but I don't necessarily think he's essential. And if you told me that he blanks in like 3 of the next 4 games, I'd be like, I can kind of see that. I can. So yeah, that was the game overall. I think Manchester United, keep an eye on them moving forward. I guess Caicedo, actually, I'd like to mention. Caicedo with 15 DEFCON in this game, the only player to pick up defensive contributions. I think he will continue to be a really nice FPL asset, and he will probably start most game weeks on like 4 points. Actually, final player, Chalobah, is now the top scoring defender in FPL. He's returned in every single game week. So yeah, Chalobah and Caicedo might offer nice value as sort of cheaper Chelsea picks if you don't want to spend the big bucks on someone like Palmer or João Pedro. So guys, this video is sponsored by a club, and what I thought I would do today is just show you my club team and then also meet with Manny, and as always, get you to guess who you think Manny will be able to get us for our team. So club is basically free to play fantasy football mixed with club ownership. The idea is you build up your club and compete in head-to-head fantasy football each week. There are also leagues, and at the end and link down below, you'll be able to see my league code. And yeah, you compete head-to-head each week and also upgrade your facilities to try and build up your club as much as possible. The more you build up your club, the bigger it gets, and obviously the better players that you can manage to pull as well. And I am in the game as the director of football. You've got the likes of FPL Pickle in there as well as head of sales and ticketing. So definitely get involved. It's completely free. Everyone that has downloaded it has loved it. And if you don't, well, it's free, so it's no harm at all. And then, as I said, I'll collect my cash, collect my coins. What we do is meet with Manny, and you can meet with Manny every few hours, and Manny is your agent, and it's essentially the way that you pull players to improve your club overall. So what I'd like you to do in your head is guess, who do you think Agent Manny will get me? It can be any player in the Premier League, from anyone from Salah and Haaland down to a player that doesn't play at all. I am going to say Granit Xhaka, but you just guess any player, and we'll meet now. So, base. Core. So this is the rarity. It's a core. It's always a bad one when I'm recording. Core defender. It is 78 rated. It's Tyrone Mings, who actually did start. And actually, DEFCON-wise, isn't terrible. What's his scores been? Yeah, like that looks like a lot of points, but in club, it's not particularly. I'm going to reject overall. You can see my club. I mean, I'm heavily reliant on Watkins and Rodgers, which I don't love. Bruno Fernandes is out my salary cap, but of course, once I improve my salary cap, he'll play. So anyway, like I said, there is so much to it. I recommend downloading it. There'll be a link down below. Check it out. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. And a massive thank you to club. And also, final thing, do make sure to join my league. It will be on your screen right now, but the league is 3462SK7. Use the link down below. Join the league. Let's get back to the video. The next game was Fulham 3, Brentford 1. I don't think too many people are considering players from these two teams. And actually, the XG in this game was 1.01 and 0.6. So 3-1 maybe slightly flatters Fulham, although I think they probably did deserve to get the win here. In a similar way to what I said with Liverpool earlier, Fulham just delivered in the moments where they had the chances. Obviously, the Josh King mistake was tough. No one wants to watch that. I do think he's been making a couple of mistakes, and as much as he's been a lovely footballer to watch, I do think a benching will come very soon for King. I just think as a young player, playing the amount of minutes that he has, making that big mistake in this game, I wouldn't be surprised if in one of the upcoming games he's benched. And even if he's not benched, let me just double check how many minutes he got in this game. His minutes have been pretty poor overall. Yeah, so he's got 76, 70, 66, 59, 66. Josh King's just not getting enough minutes for me. So as much as there is a bigger gap between him and Stack or him and Dewsbury Hall, I prefer the 5 million mids if you can. I think the only real player from this game that I would be interested in is Anderson. Anderson picks up 15 defensive contributions again. The man, along with Senesi, Tarkovsky, maybe an Agbadou, Chris Richards, these are players that are going to pick up defensive contributions every week pretty much. I do think that out of Senesi and Anderson, I think Anderson is the slightly weaker asset because I think Bournemouth's defence looked better than Fulham's. But also, if you look at the data from last season, Senesi's DEFCON per 90 is pretty much what we're seeing this season. Anderson has taken a bit of a step up. So potentially, Anderson stays at that level, or maybe we see a bit of a drop-off. And also, you do need clean sheets from Fulham along with the DEFCON. And like I said, I just see Bournemouth, as of right now, being a slightly better defence. On Thiago, I know a lot of people have looked at him as a cheap forward around 6 million. The issue is his minutes over the last two and his performances haven't been great. I do wonder if they could trial something where they play like Dango Ouattara as the 9, because he's had 71 and 64 minutes. I do think he could be doing more. So as much as he might be an okay option, Thiago, I'm not fully there right now. Like, I need him to at least be getting 90 minutes to be at least worth considering, because I don't see Brentford scoring too many goals as of right now. I think that's it overall. Like I said, I don't think I would consider anyone from these two teams other than Anderson, who will just probably pick up DEFCON points a lot of the time. The 3 games on Sunday were very, very dull. I'll read out the XG for the 3 games, then obviously go through them. 0.46 for Bournemouth, 0.14 for Newcastle. Then Sunderland Villa, it was 1.04 and 0.78. And then Man City Arsenal was 0.89 and 0.87. So only one of the 6 teams managed over 1 XG, which was Sunderland with 10 men, and they only managed 1.04. So let's start with the most boring game of the game week. Bournemouth 0, Newcastle 0. The only 2 teams to keep clean sheets this week. And in hindsight, maybe this was an obvious one, because they are 2 of the best defences in the league. Newcastle are comfortably the best defence in the league so far this season for XGC. They've conceded less than 3 XGC across 5 games. They are performing at an extremely, extremely high level. Eddie Howe is performing an expert park the bus performance in every single game, where they just do not give up chances, but as a result, they're not creating chances. You cannot defend perfectly and also create a lot. We'll discuss that in a second with Arsenal. That's the issue Arsenal are facing, I think, is that you can't expect to defend like absolute legends the whole game, but then also go and put up 3 XG. It doesn't happen. You have to make a sacrifice. And as of right now, Eddie Howe is sacrificing creating chances for the sake of defensive solidity. Interestingly, in this game, he actually played a 5 at the back with Hall and Livramento. Eddie Howe is just a fantastic defensive coach, and I mean that in a positive way at the moment. He just knows how to coach a really good defensive performance, a bit like Arteta. It doesn't matter what system they play. That's now 4 clean sheets in 5 games for Newcastle, which is highly impressive. So I do think we need to give consideration to the likes of Dan Burn, who managed to pick up defensive contributions in this game. Also Nick Pope. I think if I look at it overall, Nick Pope is probably the most sensible route into that Newcastle defence. Because as much as I love Burn, and I think has Burn played every available minute so far? I'll double check that now. He has. They do have enough defenders to not do that. Fabian Schär, I think it's actually pronounced Chow or Tiao. Again, I should learn how to pronounce that. You've got Botman. You've got multiple options that can play as centre-backs. They don't have to play Dan Burn every single game. But again, Eddie Howe loves him and he's been playing really well. So maybe Burn's an option, but I think Pope does feel like the safest route into that Newcastle defence. I do like Livramento. My concern with Livramento is that he's just not suiting the meta right now. And the meta being picking defenders that are good for DEFCON, because he's got 666 in the last 3 games. If we look at Dan Burn instead, Dan Burn has managed 669, right? Goes and gets that 9 because of the DEFCON, which also leads to bonus points. So I just feel like the centre-backs with DEFCON are better than the wing-backs right now. I suppose with Nick Pope, there's always a chance that Ramsdale comes in. So, I don't know. I want a Newcastle defender, and the data is telling me to do it, but I do also struggle with which one I think is the best choice. It's a shame they don't have a 4.5 million defender. Like, if Burn was 4.5 mil, I'd absolutely have him in there. On Bournemouth, they are now the 4th best defence in the league so far this season. And again, so much credit to Iraola. Bournemouth were written off as a team and particularly a defence at the start of the season. They've lost Kepa. They've lost Howson, Zabani, Kirkes. They are going to be a team to target. They've been brilliant. They've looked arguably even more defensively solid. Senesi has been so good. Diakite at the start of the season, really good. I think also Truffert at left back has basically looked like Kirkes, if not arguably slightly better, at least defensively. They're just looking really, really solid. And again, all credit goes to Iraola for that. In terms of who to target from the defence, I spoke to Brad, who is a Bournemouth fan, and he just said Senesi's the one. Senesi will be the one that gets DEFCON every game, even once Diakite comes back in. Did Diakite start this game? That's a good question. He did start against Newcastle, didn't get DEFCON again. Now, I do think Diakite will offer good value at 4.5 and he will get DEFCON, but we can see not on as regular basis. So Senesi's achieved defensive contributions in all 5 games. That's an extra 10 points straight away. Diakite has managed 9, 10, 7, 7. So he's hit it in one game, he's been 1 off in another, and then 3 off in the other 2 games, which is pretty good. But Senesi will just get more across the season. Also, Senesi carries a little bit more open play threat. And also, according to Brad, again, a massive Bournemouth fan, watches all the games. He said if one of them is to be dropped, Diakite feels the more likely of the 2. So yeah, you could try and save money with Diakite, but I think Senesi is the one to go for. On Semenyo's just great. Like, he hits DEFCON in this game. For goodness sake. I thought, you know what? A 0-0 game. There's no way Semenyo can... Oh, wait. He goes and gets 14 defensive contributions. Semenyo and Njai are just great assets. Great minutes. Talismanic players with good goal threat. And the 2 of them are picking up DEFCON on top of everything. Semenyo and Njai, get them in your wildcard. Get them in your teams. They're 2 of the best assets to pick. I do think, though, that this game does show that Semenyo is not like the new Salah, or even to some extent like the new Brian Mbeumo from last season. He will absolutely be a great asset, but he will not score at the current rate of what we saw across the first 4 games, at least in my opinion. So, great pick, but do temper your expectations slightly. I think that's it. Just on Senesi, by the way, I've just realised I've got a stat here. 66 DEFCON in 5 games puts Senesi as the best player in the league for defensive contributions. So, yeah, Senesi and Semenyo, get them in your teams, and maybe look to target a Newcastle defender. I suppose just to say, I still think Walter Made will offer value at points. I just think as of right now, Newcastle aren't attacking enough for me to really justify it. On Sunderland 1, Villa 1, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting through all 90 minutes of this game. I have never seen a team so pathetic as Aston Villa. I'm so sorry to say that for Villa fans that are watching and listening to this. It is pathetic. Like, the performances, it's embarrassing. And I don't know who to blame here. I feel sorry for Emery because he's still got the same passion and emotion that he's shown on the touchline. It must be painful for him watching this, but he's the one to blame at the end of the day, right? The players don't look like they care much, but that does stem from the manager. If the likes of Amorim are going to get stick for the way Man United performing, it has to fall back on Emery. He needs to change something. And once again, he goes into this game with bloody John McGinn as one of the attackers. You've got Sancho, Elliott, and Donyell Marlon sat on the bench. Gessend is not doing it for me at all. How is Marlon not getting more minutes? As soon as Marlon came on, he broke through and almost scored. And how is Elliott not starting this game ahead of John McGinn in the attacking role? No disrespect to McGinn, but for me, it was another poor performance. But the worst player on the pitch, by some distance for me, was Morgan Rogers. He has looked so bad across the opening games. I think with Ollie Watkins only managed 6 touches in the opening 42 minutes. But to some extent, when you're the number 9 in a team that are playing this badly, there's not much you can do. We saw that with points last season with Erling Haaland playing as the number 9 when Man City weren't playing well. He was doing a similar thing of like, it's not the number 9's job to link up play deeper in the pitch and to try and create chances. Your number 9's job is to stand there and score goals. And Watkins isn't really like a Bobby Firmino of the past where he's going to drop deep and create loads of chances. Ollie Watkins is a number 9. His job is to run the channels, also to score goals. And so I don't really blame Watkins too much for this, given that the stuff going on behind him is shocking. It just feels really defensive and outdated from Emery's system. So yeah, anyway, back on Morgan Rogers. If I owned Morgan Rogers right now, I would launch him so hard out of my team that it would break the sound barrier. Like, he would be gone in an instant. I know that's crazy to say because Watkins is more expensive, but at least with Watkins, he's sort of semi-getting a couple of chances. And when you look at the other forwards, who are you putting in instead of Watkins? Gyökeres? Have you been impressed by Gyökeres? I've not. João Pedro? Yeah, fair enough, but most people already own. Haaland, but most people have another forward, like a Mateta or something like that. They'll sell for Haaland instead. I don't know who you're selling Watkins for at this stage. Whereas with Rodgers, Njai, Semenyo, Stack, Reinders, Foden, there are loads of midfielders that you might want instead. So for me, I think Watkins and Rodgers are probably both sells now. I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you to keep either of them. On a wildcard, neither of them are probably going to get close to my wildcard team. But Watkins, I can understand keeping a little bit more, given he might be on pens, and also I don't see many viable alternatives. Morgan Rogers, I think you've probably just got to get rid. I don't see any good reason to keep him right now. The only good reason is that Emery, for some reason, loves him. and continues to play him. Because if it was up to most fans, and if you search social media, Morgan Rogers probably wouldn't be in the starting 11 at the moment. So yeah, sorry to be so harsh on Villa, but I think it's important that people understand they are the worst team in the league. They have the lowest XG so far this season. And as a result, they're going against a Fulham team that have just beat Brentford 3-1. It doesn't look like it will get any better. I would get rid of the pair of them. And this is probably going to be the week where Villa beat Fulham 4-0 and Rodgers and Watkins both absolutely haul. The only Sunderland player, for me right now, that I can sit here and say I really want in my team, like Xhaka could provide value, but really, it's Mukiele. Mukiele? Sorry if I'm butchering the name. He's now achieved defensive contributions in every single game he started. So he didn't start game 1 and 3, I think that's right, which is why he's not popping up on the list, which is making him go under the radar. Because if you search by sort of, again, total DEFCON, he won't be there. But yeah, didn't start in 1 or 2, sorry. So he started in 3, 4, and 5. And in that time, hit DEFCON in every game. And he's averaging 14 per 90. So at 4 million, if you're looking for a DEFCON monster more than fixtures or rotations, it probably is Mukiele. And I am considering putting him in. My concern is when I want to bench boost, Rodon has better fixtures, and Estev actually rotates with my current defenders better. So if I'm looking at rotation, it's Estev. If I'm looking at fixtures, it's Rodon. If I'm looking at DEFCON, it's Mukiele. And I know 4 million defenders you wouldn't think it makes a massive amount of difference, but it can be important, especially if you need to rely on them for a bench boost. So yeah, for me, big shout out to Sunderland. I think I need to do more of a shout out to Sunderland here. I just basically bashed on Villa. Sunderland had 10 men for a lot of this game, and they still performed really well. This game for me showed that Sunderland are the real deal. I was concerned over the opening 4 games that Sunderland's fixtures were really easy, and you could argue that Villa is also an easy fixture at the moment. But in a game like this, where it looks like everything's against them with the 10 men, they still looked brilliant. So they are a well set up team. They will score a few goals. They will defend really well. I've been super impressed. So the final game of the game week then, Arsenal 1, Man City 1. It probably was, I suppose, a 1-1 game. This was such a strange game. Arsenal, you kind of did what you thought Arsenal would do. Man City, what on earth happened? So it was the lowest ever possession for a Pep Guardiola Man City team. So they had 32.8% possession. That is not the way we expect Man City to set up. Pep Guardiola was actually asked about it in the press conference, and he said, I'm happy to have another record at Manchester City. And he said it's credit to Arsenal that he felt like he needed to do this. So what essentially happened, they went 1-0 up, and then just brought on, I think it was it Ake for Foden, and just played 5 at the back. They just defended like Arsenal have defended in the past for the majority of that game, especially in the second half. And it was clever. Because what can Arsenal not do? Create loads of chances at the moment. They're just not doing it. Like, Arsenal can't break teams down, especially when they do sit up in a bit of a low block. Like, Arsenal are struggling to create chances. Once Saka and Eze came on in the second half, I do think they looked a little bit better. They created a little bit more. And I think it was a huge mistake from Arteta to not start Eberechi Eze. Because, honestly, Saka's just come back from injury. I would not have expected Saka to start. And that could have been a bit reckless to just chuck him straight into that game. I don't see the reason for not having Eze in that game. Whether it was in place of Marino, because we saw him in that second half, playing in a central role, Eze can do the job. So whether it's in place of Marino or in place of Trossard, Eze is a difference maker and a game winner. I just can't wrap my head around why he didn't start this game. It made no sense. And as soon as he came on, like I said, they looked better. And Eze's quality, like everyone's talking about Martinelli for that goal. Great finish, by the way, and a brilliant run. I don't want to discredit him. Eze's pass from deep. I was like a quarterback, wasn't it? He dropped into that number 6 role and just pinged that beautiful pass over the top. I would not be surprised now if we start to see Eze in a more central role with maybe Martinelli or Trossard off the left, because he's shown he can do that. So yeah, I do think mistakes were made by Arteta. I think Gary Neville said this, but when you make 2 subs at half time, that shows that you have made a mistake, that you've gone into the game in the wrong way. It does just feel really passive. And I know that's almost stupid to say, because City set up even more defensively than Arsenal. And obviously, if Arteta had set up in the way City did, people would be criticising. But it did just feel like Arteta, he goes into these games not wanting to lose. And it's just not the mindset for me. Like, you can't go into a game not wanting to. You need to go into the game wanting to win. And I think if he'd have gone into the game with Eze in the team, and maybe even Martinelli, and not had Marino in midfield, and Trossard, who, for me, isn't a difference maker, it could have been a different game. But on Manchester City, apart from the random park the bus, Erling Haaland is a joke. If you've not watched the Haaland goal, he flicks the ball about 20 yards into his own half and then just turns. And I would say it's one of the most terrifying things in football, watching Erling Haaland turn and run. He is just stupidly quick. Like he lost Gabriel like that, and there was no chance of anyone catching him. Tijani Reinders dribbles with the ball, passes it off to the side, Haaland finishes, and all of a sudden, we've got a 9-pointer for Haaland and a 9-pointer for Reinders. I'll just say on Tijani Reinders, he's brilliant. He is obviously startable in every single fixture. He's already got 2 really good scores this season. I do have concerns whether he starts the Burnley game, just because it feels like the sort of game where he could be given a rest. But physically, he doesn't look like he needs a rest. Like, he's one of those players where he almost gives me Bruno Fernandes vibes. He could run for 90 minutes 3 times a week and just be absolutely fine. So maybe he starts again. And I will just say, don't expect DEFCON almost ever for Reinders. The only reason he got DEFCON in this game is because City had 32.8% possession. In any normal game, Reinders won't get close. So let me actually have a look at his DEFCON, because I might be lying across the first games. Yeah, so 3, 5, 5, 7, 12. So other than the Arsenal game, the closest he got was against Manchester United. And Man United did quite well in that game and held the ball at points. So, and also Man United lose the ball a lot, which is why he gets the recoveries. But it was 7 DEFCON in that game, and then he had 5, 5, 3 before that. So I don't expect at any point really across the season Reinders to get DEFCON. So if you bench boosted Reinders, I'm going to say slightly fortunate to go and get a 9-pointer in this game. But yeah, he performed really well. And like I said, I want to re-emphasize that stat for Haaland. 10 big chances this season. Haaland's 10 big chances is more than 14 of the 20 Premier League teams in total. That's incredible, including Liverpool, Bournemouth, Spurs, and Newcastle. So I think Haaland is absolutely a must-own at the moment. He could always drop off, but until we see that, trying to bet on a Haaland drop-off before Burnley at home, who've conceded the most XG this season, seems a little bit... It doesn't seem like the best bet to make. On Gyökeres, I still think Gyökeres and Arsenal attackers will offer excellent value against weaker teams. Arsenal are flat-track bullies. We've seen that for 3 seasons now. If you look at their games so far this season, they have bullied Leeds and Forest. They've struggled a little bit more against United, Liverpool and City. They will get clean sheets against anyone, but attacking-wise, don't expect much from Arsenal in difficult games. I look at Arsenal versus Newcastle. This has a 0-0 written all over it, or a 1-1, or a 1-0. So if you're including Gyökeres expecting loads against a Newcastle or a City, it's just not the correct thing to do. But considering... Let's look at their fixtures coming up. West Ham in 7. That could be a bloodbath. You've then got Fulham, Palace, Burnley, Sunderland, Spurs. None of those are fixtures where you would expect them to set up in a defensive way or struggle to break the teams down. So I think that over the next 6 or so weeks, Gyökeres will score goals and Arsenal will get more goals in general. But these aren't the sort of games to expect that from them. I think that's it. So there we go, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that. This has been a slightly different video, like I said, overall. But if you have enjoyed and you've watched this point and you're not yet subscribed, firstly, please do consider subscribing. If you're listening on audio and you like these longer videos or longer podcasts on the FPL Raptor channel, please do rate 5-star. We're approaching 100 5-star ratings. I'd really appreciate it. And finally, if you're still watching or listening at this point, let me know if you would like to see this on a consistent basis. I don't know if it would be alongside FPL Therapy instead of permanently as the odd week when I can't do it. I'd need to have a sit down and think, but I just want to see how this is received. It might be that people hate it, it doesn't suit the channel, and as a result, I don't do it again. And no one bothers watching. But if you are still watching, do let me know if you'd like to see it in the future. Let me know if I misspoke at any point or if you think I've missed anything overall. And like I said, if you haven't yet seen my wildcard video, which I uploaded yesterday, I highly recommend that. That will be linked at the end. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.